Hi everyone, this is Brant, your CT310 TA once again. We're going to be going over some of the content from Recitation 3, mainly that this recitation is about an assignment that's due next week on Tuesday. It's your first personal web page. It's assignment 1. You can find it on the course page up under assignments. The purpose of this is for you to get some practice with writing HTML and CSS code and just building a general web page and getting creative a little bit. So obviously before you do this, make sure that your environment is set up properly. If you are having trouble with that, you can actually look at the video for Recitation 1 or reference the Recitation 1 page. You just go through the schedule down to Recitation's environment setup. We will be adding a style sheet in today. If you didn't watch the video on Recitation 2, I'll show you again how to link that style sheet in. And then for this assignment, you are supposed to submit your files through Canvas, so you're going to have to tar them up. If you don't know how to use the tar command, it's right here. You use this in the terminal, so go to the directory that has your files for this project, and you can do tar, C for create, V for verbose, F is specifying the name of the archive file. So here you're going to just name this your EID, and then you're going to add all these files to it. And if you want an example page that I had made for you all, there's one here that basically has a top nav bar and just some basic elements. And if you're curious about how I actually made that nav bar, you can click on this link, and that'll take you to W3 Schools, where you can actually explore all these different types of navigation bars. So for today, what we're going to go over is that one of the requirements for this assignment is to have a navigation element or a nav bar. I went over how to do a side nav bar in class today, so I think I'm going to go over that in this video right now. Since you can either do left or right or top navigation elements, and if you go here, you can learn about how to make one of these top ones by going to this link. So I'm gonna just do a quick demo of how to create one on the side and how to play with that, and that should give you a little bit of a head start on how to do your CSS and HTML for your web page. So first things first, I'm going to go to my local HTML. Now, you can see there's some content here. I'm going to go ahead and clear this out because it's from the lab earlier today. So let's see if that updates properly. Yeah, so there should be nothing here. You can see that if I go into my local HTML, wherever that is, right here, you can see I have an index.html file and a styles.css. I'll go ahead and hop into the lab machine real quick. When you create these files, make sure their permissions are set properly, such that there's read and execute permissions for everyone who's going to touch this file. That includes the web server. So to set those permissions, you'll do 755 and then styles, test local index, whatever you want to set. But we talked about that in some of the previous videos, so we're going to go ahead and just dive right into writing some of this code. So first things first, this one on the left is my index.html. This one's my style CSS. So first things, we got to do this doc type, head, body, and I actually need to put this HTML tag as well. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, right now we have nothing in here. So I'm going to just create some quick content. Yeah, so now you can see that everything is showing up properly. Now when we want to make a when we want to make a nav bar, what we're going to do is create this div element, and we're going to add the class property to the div element, and we're going to set that property equal to Sidenav. Now this doesn't do anything yet. As you can see, the div property is essentially empty. We could put some content in there if we wanted. Sidenav content. And in fact, I'm actually going to add a bunch of text in here so that I can show you in a second how this whole thing is going to work. So let's grab some of the text from this page, just add it in here for some filler. Now, if I wrong web page, where is it? If I reload this, okay, I've got some Sidenav content. I've still got my hello world. Now, what we want to do is we want this whole left side of the page to be our nav bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to create almost like a width to the nav bar that spans like some amount of the page, and then we're going to take all the main content and we're going to move it over to the right. So the first step is that we want to put this main content inside of a main tag. So we'll put that in there. And now we're going to have to use some CSS to make this work. So I don't know if there's a way to even do this without using CSS, so we're going to link in our style sheet, which currently has nothing in it. So actually, I want to show you that this style sheet is how it works before and after we link it in. So right here, I'm specifying for all elements inside of the body, set the color to red. Now in CSS, I think we talked about this in the last video, but there's a selector, and then there are some properties associated with that. So this one, we're selecting the body, and all text elements inside of the body will be red. Now, since this page, the CSS isn't linked in yet, nothing has changed, right? So we want to link the CSS in so that we can actually make changes to our page. So we'll do link rel equals style sheet, href equals styles.css, which is the name of this file, and they're in the same directory, as you can see, so you'll be able to access that. And then I believe it's content equals text/CSS. Okay, so now, if everything works properly and it links in, we should see some red. We did not see any red. That's quite interesting. So one thing it could be is the cache. Yes, it is the cache. Okay, so this is something important to know, that when you're creating web content, Google Chrome and other web browsers will often download some of the styles and HTML and stuff, so that every time you go to that web page, it doesn't have to re-download them. And as a result, when you're making changes, sometimes you won't see that change reflected, and that just means that that it's probably cached on the web browser. So what you can do is you can go somewhere in your history settings and clean your cache out, but what you probably want to do is you just want to use Command Shift R or Control Shift R if you're on a Windows or Linux machine, I believe. So that works. We know that the style sheet's linked in properly. Obviously, we don't want all our text to be red, so we're going to actually start playing with this nav bar. So first thing is we're going to select the side nav using .sidenav. Now what this does is, I'm going to make this bigger, is we're going to select this element over here, the class, and that to say you're selecting a class, you use the dot and then the name of the class. And we're going to set some properties for this. So let's say we're going to make the width 300 pixels, let's say. Okay, so now what happens when we reload this? Okay, so it makes this 300 pixels wide. This one is just, since it's so small, it's kind of hard to see. But what if we, let's do this. So you see this is on the left, now this is down below. If we were to do an inspect element, you can see that, oh yeah, this is super zoomed in from lab earlier. You can see that if we go to our side nav, we can see its width is over here set at 300 by 502. And then we can see this main spans the whole amount of the page. Now the thing is that we want these to be, we want the side nav to be on the side, and we want this to be up here, right? We want this main content to be up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to Basically, what's happening is because we specified this side nav first, because we specified it first, it's coming up first in the page, and the width is set to a certain amount, but it's coming before this. So what we need to do is use this position fixed. Now what it's gonna do is basically this is gonna ignore all this stuff, and this is just always going to be in this position on the page. And so this main content will move up. You see how now it's overlapped over the top, and that's obviously not what we want, but now at least this is kind of ignoring the presence of this and not being pushed all the way down here. So now what we need to do is take our main content, and we want to set the left margin to 300 pixels, let's say. So now the margin here is 300 pixels and the width of this side nav is 300 pixels. So what's going to happen is this is going to stay at 300 pixels wide, but all this stuff is going to move over to the right because we're basically creating a margin on the left-hand side. So now it's moved over. Now it's a little close for me. I don't really like how close this is. So what I'm going to do is make this like 325. There we go. Moved over. Okay, cool. So now you can see we have this side nav content on the left and this main content in the main. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and basically actually add real nav content in here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete all this crazy text. And we did not go over this in the last video, and I totally thought I did, and I forgot how to do a link tag. First of all, it's an A, which stands for hypertext anchor. And then you do href to point at the location of the thing you want to link to. So in this case, we'll point to CSU's homepage. So I'll do https://www.colstate.edu. Now so basically this thing, when someone clicks on my link, it's going to go to the Call State homepage. Now if I were to reload this, you wouldn't see anything. Obviously we're going to lose all this content, but there's no link here. And that reason is because with this link tag, you also have to add some text in there, like click here. Click here for the link. So now when I re-render this, you'll see click here for the link in that left here. Yeah. So now this link should take me to CSU's homepage. There you go. And that's good. So now we are able to add some links on our nav bar. So CSU's homepage is this one. I'll copy this down. I'll go to the CS homepage, and then to our CT310 class page as well. CT310. And one thing to note is that these hrefs don't have to point to a web resource. If you have something else in your directory, let's say you had an about page, about.html, and you were to make this about, when you were to click on this link, it'll just load this next HTML page that you have. So if I were to create in here an about page, which clearly it doesn't have anything in it right now, but let's just do it for the sake of this example, reload this. We'll talk about this in a second, but this about page goes to nothing. Okay, because it's an empty page, right? But we're redirecting to something on my site, which is really important to know when you start doing nav bars for navigating around your site. Okay, so now let's talk about this. See how all the elements are in line with each other like this? Basically, they're coming in this like paragraph style format where they come one after another, and we obviously want them vertical to make it more of that nav bar experience. So what we have to do is down here, we're going to say select side nav, and then select all links that occur inside of our side nav. And those links, we want them to display in block. Currently they're displaying in inline. So now this should cause these to align vertically. There you go. So now they're aligned vertically. What also I'm going to do, just for the sake of playing around, is I'm going to add some padding. Just so they're not so close together, so they should space out a little bit now. There we go. And I don't really like the default link. I don't like this. The blue and purple and that stuff. But I'm going to wait to change that because I want to also show you this is going to help reinforce that idea of these HTML boxes, the CSS boxes, right? Like when we were, see how the main content is here, and there's a box, and it is actually, this is what's interesting is, so it's ignoring the position of this stuff over here, right? And it's just shifted to the right by 300 pixels, which I think is kind of cool. But if we look at, not in the head, inside of the body, oh, sorry, maybe it is not, no, I was wrong. So yeah, the blue is where our content is, the left is its margin. But anyways, so here is our side nav. See how there's a box around it? We want to add a background color to that. So let's make that something like a gray color. I don't love a lot of these default colors. Let's do dark gray, see how that looks. And color is something we can talk about later on. But also, I want this nav bar to go all the way down. So what I'm going to do is I am going to set the height of it to be 100% of the page. So let's see what happens now. That's great. I saw this somewhere earlier. I want to try it. If it doesn't work, we will abandon it. But I think you can also set the top to 0 and left to 0, and that might fix it at the top left. Yeah. So now my nav bar is moved up here in the top left, which is kind of cool. So it's kind of stuck on the side of this page. Now, it would be kind of nice to somehow align this text in the center. We might be able to do that by doing text align center in here. I'm actually not 100% sure that this will work, but we can try it. There we go. So this is all aligned in the center. And I'm not super stoked about this, how close it is to the top, so I'm going to add some padding on the top of this. Now I'm doing the padding not on the links, but on the sidebar, because if I do it on the links, it's going to do all of them. Whereas really I'm looking at this side nav, and then this padding attribute is currently 0. So if I were to change this over here, let's say, see that 20, I could change it to 100 and it would move it down. So I'm going to change this padding top to, let's say, 50 pixels. And yes, I think some of you are probably asking yourself, why are we using pixels? What happens if we use a mobile device? Which there's a way to do it with this playing around. Toggle device toolbar. Responsive. Let's say what it would look like on a Galaxy. Okay, that's not bad. iPad. Pixel XL. So it looks fine so far, but yeah, some of this is not necessarily the best because these pixel sizes are different on different devices, but for now we're just playing around, and that's something we'll talk about later in the class. Okay, cool. Now remember I said I don't really like this default styling, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the text decoration, make it none, and I'm going to make the color of these white smoke. So now these navs are all going to be white and have no underlines. Yeah, there we go. And another thing is, like, it's kind of hard to tell that we're over a link, so what I'm going to do is do side nav, select all links, and then if you're hovering over them using the :hover property, I want their color to change. So let's make that into a green color, just so you can see it. Now if we reload this, we can see that they go green when you highlight them, which is kind of cool. They also, this is something you could play around with, and I'm not 100% confident that this will work, but you can see in the top nav bar example that we had like that when we go over the links in this page, they kind of get this change in color. So we can try and do that with these ones. I don't know how it's going to work. Yeah, see that? So now when we scroll over it, these little boxes around them change color. Sorry, I kind of got diverged somehow back to the other page, but so I did that by setting this background color property. Now, if we do inspect, you can see the reason why this kind of works is that these, see this, the blue and green that surrounds each one of these links, that's the background. So if we wanted to play with these, let's say we don't like this color, this is another useful tip, and I don't know how to find that specific style that I want, but we can say force element state hover, okay? And now I can change this to a different color and see how it looks. Corn silk is not ideal. Crimson, not very good. I'm not really probably going to find the greatest color playing around with this, but it's more to show you how this kind of works. Dark gray is the same as our background, so that's going to make no difference. What are our gray options? Maybe some light gray? Probably better, right? So we could, this doesn't change it in our code, this just changes it here so that we can see the difference when we scroll over them. So that's fine and dandy and all. I'm going to unforce that element state. I'm going to change this to light gray. And that's pretty much it for today. I just wanted to show you all how to do this side nav because I thought it was kind of fun to play around with, add some highlighting to it, and then you can actually play around with adding main content to the page and doing what you want to do. So there's other ways of doing this as well. You might put this in a list, but then you have to fiddle around with some of the list properties because there will be dots here and stuff that you have to remove. But for now, this works great, right? You can go to the CT310 page, do all that. So go ahead and use that as something that you can play with. Obviously, if you want to see the code here, I'll give you all the code and you can pause it here and look at it. But for now, that is all for this recitation, so thank you for listening.